It's the Full Court Press with Eric Frandsen and Jason Walker.
Welcome back to the to the show that we're doing right now.
Following the local teams, breaking down the biggest games with in-depth analysis and team interview. Join the show by calling into 435-752-1069 or text 435-339-0321. It's the Full Court Press.
Rose, answer, yes! Caught! Touchdown! They did it!
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome on in to another edition of the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. Love to have you part of the show as well. 435-339-0321. That's the Full Court Press text line if you want to chime in. Last hour, a lot of discussion about Utah State men's basketball and what's going on around the Mountain West Conference. Utah State returning home. They will host Fresno State on Saturday. And if you don't have your tickets, good luck.
Sorry.
I think there's just a handful of single tickets scattered around the arena.
You can count them on the fingers of a clumsy lumberjack. That's how many tickets are left.
But get there. Love to see a full sold-out crowd to celebrate this year's team. Doesn't matter who the opponent is. Folks should be coming out just to watch Utah State men's basketball. Yeah, it's exciting and fun.
Well, the fact that you're selling out a day or two early of a game like Fresno State, like normally these are the games where you don't end up selling out. Like you get like 9,500. Like even in these good years, like it's just take a little off top. There's not people filling out the entire section. And it's because it's one of these blowout games. And you sell out the big games against Boise and San Diego State and all that. The fact that, we're a couple days out. There's still a couple days between now and the Fresno State game, a game that the Aggies are expected to win by like 25. And they're single-digit tickets. So people want to watch this team. And it's going to be officially a sellout. Whether or not there's maybe a lone ticket here or there where somebody doesn't get a seat, it's going to be sold out. All 10,200 whatever unofficially there is in the spectrum. That's how many people are going to be listed there, and it's going to be loud, and it's going to be great.
And I understand the home game against Boise State on January 11th is pretty similar.
Yeah,
just single game tickets scattered around. It's hard to find two seats together.
Yeah, that's one that gets sold out way early for how big of a game it's going to be. It was huge last year because that was a Stu Morrill. Was it Stu Morrill or J.C. Carroll? I forget which one was which.
That would have been the Stu Morrill.
Okay.
Because J.C. was earlier because he got his jersey up in the rafters, and then it was the next year that they did Stu Morrill on the court.
Okay. Yeah. So that was a huge one. Obviously, it was a very fantastic win. It wasn't a very exciting game, to be honest. But it was obviously a very big night, and a lot of people were there.
Yeah. Yes. And that game will be on CBS Sports Network, so national broadcast of that one. But the Utah State Aggies return home after picking up 3 massive road wins. Arguably the best 3-game road trip that Utah State has had in at least modern history.
Yeah, it's the thing I'd have to go back and look. It'd be really hard to quantify once you get out of the net era where it can be kind of sort of easy to quickly look at some of these teams. But yeah, I can't imagine there's been a better 3-game winning streak. And if there is, it'd have been in March. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Yeah. So massive 3-game stretch for the Aggies, and they get it done and ring the bell in each case. At St. Mary's, at San Diego State, and then at Nevada. We've got Fresno State coming into town on Saturday. Fresno's only got 4 wins. All 4 of those wins are against teams that are in the bottom part of NCAA. There's 355 teams at this level.
363.
363. Okay. All 4 of Fresno State's wins are in the 300 or worse category.
Yeah, Fresno State, not a very good team right now. They're trying to rebuild. They leaned heavily on JUCO players, and they got some good JUCO players, but haven't put it together as far as being a good Division I team right now.
Yeah.
We've got a few texts we want to get to. I think kind of hanging over from last hour. So before we get into this hour's topic, 5338 saying I could listen to the full court press at a high level for another 5 to 7 years if I wanted to.
Please do. Why don't stop at 5 to 7 years?
Yeah, be around as long as we can. However long. How long has this show been going?
Oh, good question. Over 20 years.
There we go.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
It's been going for a little while. 8968 texting in. I think LeBron James will get votes with 2 broken legs 2 years after he retires.
Yeah, the only way LeBron James isn't going to be like in the top 5 of fan voting is when he is no longer on the ballot.
And look, he's still playing at a very high level. Guy just turned 40, and he's still one of the top guys in the league. Not just all-star voting, just looking at pure production, he's still one of the top guys in the league.
Yeah, so at least he, in his old age, actually kind of deserves to be an all-star. I don't know about an all-star starter, but an all-star. He still has that level of player. Be interesting to see if he ever gets to a point where he's not like an all-star level player. Like, is he going to play that long? He's quickly approaching that. Like,
didn't he say just the other day, if he takes care of his body, he thinks he could still play at a pretty good level for another 5 years?
I think he's got like 2 at like this level. Like it's already like his career is running on fumes. Like he's flooring it right now, but he's on fumes still.
Right.
So,
if he'd be willing to play as a role player on a roster with a lot of other like serious dudes, he could extend his career a few more years. But I don't know if he'd be willing to do that.
Yeah. And if he really wanted to, he could do the whole Vince Carter thing where he drags on his career like an extra 8 years longer than it needed to be.
Just a journeyman.
But Vince Carter was an effective player up until like his last year. It was just he wasn't Vince Carter anymore. He was, of course, he could still dunk it, 360 dunk.
But he became more of a spot-up shooter than a play above the rim highlight reel.
Yeah, it was every now and again he'd get above the rim. If he was on a fast break, he'd get above the rim.
2964 texting in. Has there been another program in the country that has had so much turnover at the coaching position, yet still have so much success like the Aggies?
I don't think there is one. Like they're just a lot of programs can sometimes be tied to how good their current head coach is. Not all of them are. There's some that are going to be successful no matter what, but so many are like, you look at St. Mary's, Gonzaga, even San Diego State to some degree, they've gone through a couple of coaches and been fine. But a lot of them, their coach leaves and suddenly they're like, what do we do now? I mean, heck, Utah State was like that, actually. That's the funny thing is they went to Tim Duryea and they weren't good anymore.
Right.
But then they just decided that, hey, it doesn't matter who the head coach is. Spectrum Magic is going to carry this program. Maybe the Aggies are just supremely lucky that they keep snagging good head coaches. But there is also something special about the program.
And the culture about what's expected.
Yeah, and being in a good conference, too.
Yeah.
Like that's, you've attracted good coaches. You bring them to a good conference that's able to test, but also lift up. Like the Aggies have been to the NCAA tournament these years because the conference has been good enough to lift up their resume. I mean, they've only won the conference tournament twice in the last 5-6 years, but they've had 2 or 3 other qualifications for the NCAA tournament because this conference is good enough to lift in there. So a lot of different things going into the Aggies being this successful, but it is still ridiculous, to be quite frank,
It is.
that they're able to do this.
And it's not just coaches that have changed over. There have been athletic directors that have changed over in the course of that time, too.
And it's why people keep like doubting the Aggies. Like they don't doubt the Aggies as a program. Like they're not saying, oh, the Aggies aren't good. Because they're still picking him to finish like 5th or 6th or whatnot. Generally, I know they got picked to finish 9th a couple years back, but in a similar-ish situation, they got picked to finish 5th or 6th. They got picked there instead of being picked where Fresno State is, despite going through some similar levels of turnover, because there's respect for the program. But because of what the Aggies keep going through, like normally teams don't do what the Aggies do. Like, Danny Sprinkle goes up to Washington, is in a pretty similar-ish situation to what he did at Utah State. Not a whole lot of returning talent going into a tough conference. Ken Pom projects like Washington to be the underdog in all but 2 of their remaining games. I think maybe all but 1 of their remaining games. Projecting to be like 3 or 4 games below 500. Like that's what is expected to happen. You go in, you rebuild, and you lose for a minute if you're in a tough situation. and then maybe you can build it up. That's why everyone doubts the Aggies. They have good reason for it. But maybe they won't have good reason because the Aggies are just, they're, I guess, now the exception.
Yeah. It is absolutely crazy. Although I know people have brought up the whole 3 different athletic directors in those 3 different hires, but one guy was there through all of that. In fact, he made one of the hires himself. Jerry Bovee was very much a part of the process when Ryan Odom was hired. He made the hire of Danny Sprinkle, and he was involved in the hire for Jared Calhoun. So there was that consistency to some degree. But, it's unheard of what Utah State has gone through over the last few years and still have this level of success. 5338 texting in, I'm confused by Ryan Mark's commitment to Utah Tech. Wouldn't he have been the starting punter for the Aggies next season? Why would he transfer to a lower division school?
It's probably him being told to leave. That's what I would guess. Like the thing with Tanner Cragen and Ryan Marks, in any normal year, like they'd have been your starting kicker and starting punter. But I think with an incoming coach and the fact that Utah State's now, Bronco Mendenhall and his staff have brought in like 5 or 6 punters, kickers, and long snappers.
Yeah, a lot of specialists.
I think they had their eyes on other players, other transfers, other recruits. And I think they ended up pushing Tanner Cragen and Ryan Marks out. That's about the only way it makes sense for me. Because, with 5338 saying, like, why would you leave Utah State, go to Utah Tech? That's just a pure step down.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that it was Ryan Marks' choice.
8968. We'll get back to some transfer stuff here in just a minute with football. 8968. I hope LeBron knows when to retire. Yeah. I mean, there's been a few guys who've stayed on longer than probably should.
I mean,
we're seeing that in New York right now with the Jets.
Is that a problem, though?
Certain quarterback.
I mean, maybe sometimes you'd wish they'd retire because then they'd maybe save themselves some grace, but I think everyone would kind of enjoy watching LeBron not be good. And I'm certainly having a ball watching Aaron Rodgers look like a dud.
There's a term for that, right? Where you find joy in watching other people's.
I don't think I can pronounce
pain.
it properly because I think it's French.
Is it
Freudenfreude or Freud? No,
or
is it German, actually?
It's German word, yeah.
Excuse me. I should avoid confusing German and French. I get in trouble doing that.
I don't want to try to attempt it. Let's see, 654 Freudenscheid. That's something like.
Oh, did I get it back? Did I get it backwards? Somebody's got to text in and tell us our European language skills are lacking.
6543 texting in. It may be that the Ags may dominate this conference and still only get a 12 seed in NCAA, according to one bracketology I saw.
Is it Joe Lunardi?
Yeah, don't trust that guy.
Yeah, if the Aggies dominate the conference, like if they somehow manage to get 17, 18 wins, which again that would be absurd. In mind that's out of 20 games. Then you're looking at that 6-7 range. Maybe actually, because again last year they should have been a 6-7, but they didn't get that. If they dominated the league the way they've kind of started off, which is kind of only possible because the league's a bit weaker. Like last year's Aggie team would actually probably be in a similar situation to where they probably would have been able to win at Nevada, probably could have won at St. Mary's and San Diego State, or at least gone 2-1 in that stretch. I don't know if they'd have gone 3-0, but they would have been pretty good. If they dominate, they're not getting any worse than an 8.
So I just pulled up Bracket Matrix, and they analyze anybody who puts a bracket together.
Yeah, pretty much anybody they can find that seems legitimate enough.
So as of yesterday, they analyzed 31 different brackets, and then it averages it all out. So Utah State right now is a number 7 seed, the top number 7 seed. And it also will tell you across all these different publications where they would put the Aggies, and they also highlight their high and their low. Haslametrics says Utah State as a 2 seed. And then somebody has the Aggies as an 11 seed.
How does Haslametrics have the Aggies as a 2 seed?
I don't know, but they do.
Like, what? I'm sorry, that's just dumb.
That's a little bizarre. San Diego State has slipped down to a 9 seed, with their lowest as an 11 and their highest at a 7. And then Boise State is appearing on one bracket out there.
Yeah, I like to know who that bracket is. That's outdated. Sometimes these aren't because I know the last update for Bracket Matrix was January 1st. So it doesn't get updated super often during this time of year. Once you get into like the earliest days of March, they're updating like every other day.
Right.
Because somebody's putting
larger body of work and
yeah. And to note with Bracket Matrix last year, the final calculation they did with 226 brackets, Utah State was an 8th seed, which is where they actually ended up being. They were an 8th seed. No. Is this actually? I need to double check if this is the actual order or if this is adjusted to show. Actually, this is adjusted to show the reality. Hold on a second. The Matrix, it had Utah State as a 6th seed, excuse me, and they ended up being an 8th seed. So I misread this. So keep in mind, Bracket Matrix is going to probably overrate where the Aggies are going to be because the committee hates Utah State in the Mountain West. More specifically, they just hate the Mountain West.
Yeah, not a lot of love.
So that's kind of the problem there. So most people had the Aggies being in that 6-7 range. I think they were kind of on the low end of being a 6th seed. But the committee says we don't like the Mountain West, and they put them at 8. So Bracket Matrix right now having the Aggies, you said it was a 7 seed?
Yeah.
That's probably more reflective of an 8 or probably just an 8 seed again, because that just seems to be where the committee likes to put the Aggies. They've done it several times in a row now. No, they were the 10 seed that one, 10 or 11 seed, the year they played Texas Tech. But I think they're realistic, even if the Aggies are able to dominate the Mountain West. With the Mountain West being a bit weaker, with there being some clear bias, I don't feel comfortable like predicting the Aggies being like if they went 18-2. Even with that, I'd have trouble predicting them to be a 5 or 6 seed. Not that they wouldn't deserve that, but because there's a reality we got to pay attention to.
Because there are other humans that will decide in a room, and they have their own agendas and opinions.
Yeah, but it's nice that we can have a Utah State team that even when they were dominant in the Big West and the WAC, they could, go undefeated in the WAC, win the conference tournament, and be a 12 seed. If the Aggies went undefeated in the Mountain West and won the conference tournament, they would be a 4 or a 5 seed. Like, they just straight up would. But the fact that you're going to have a couple of slip-ups at some point at minimum, like that's your minimum 2 losses, that's going to set the Aggies back in a bit of a weaker conference, and it's going to lead to them not having this super high seed. But it's very possible you could see the Aggies once again having their highest seed ever. Their highest seed ever right now being an 8. A 7 is very possible. But, of course, you got to keep doing what they're doing right now. What they've done the last 3 games, if they can be that team the rest of the way, they're going to be perfectly fine.
Before we hit a timeout, 8968 texting in. Do you think it'll improve with the reading in the pack?
Like
going to the Pac-12?
Yeah, like as far as the potential seeding? I mean, it should.
Or is that beating the pack as in the Wolf Pack? I'm guessing he's thinking about the Pac-12.
Well,
I don't know. But the teams at the new Pac-12 is a great basketball conference. Washington State, Gonzaga, Oregon State, they all perform well in the net. It'll...
Yeah, so you're going to be in a strong conference.
It'll be a strong basketball conference.
It'll be the 6th best conference by most metrics that you put out there. That's where the Mountain West is right now, but it's going to be it'll be more condensed, but it'll be, the good teams condensing in, Utah State and San Diego State and Gonzaga kind of likely carrying that conference early on. But obviously Boise State doing very well. Colorado State, if they're able to rebound, and hopefully someday Fresno State gets good at basketball again. So, yeah, you'd see there'd be more respect for a rebuilt Pac-12 than there is for a Mountain West, which the Mountain West does have a level of respect as a mid-major conference that no other mid-major conference has. Like, sure, there are other multi-bid mid-major conferences, the A-10 being kind of the biggest one. I think there's another that I'm forgetting. I want to say the Missouri Valley, but I don't think that's.
Well, West Coast Conference is kind of on the fence right now.
Yeah, with Gonzaga and St. Mary's and once upon a time BYU. It's they can be, but that's like multi-bid as in 2. The Mountain West is a multi-bid as in you can pull 6 at its peak, often 4. This year's going to be a down year because it's probably only going to be 2 or 3, but it is a consistent multi-bid conference, and the Pac-12 is going to be the good teams from the Mountain West plus Gonzaga, and that's going to be the Pac-12. So it'll help even more. It'll garner more respect across the board.
8968. Sorry, I meant seeding. Yeah. So the Pac-12, the new Pac-12 would be a very good basketball conference.
Yeah. So like if Utah State wins the new Pac-12, that right there is like minimum 7-8 seed, like bare minimum. Probably more because that means you're beating Gonzaga and beating San Diego State, and the other teams you're beating are Oregon State and Washington State. Like instead of the other teams you're beating are like Wyoming and San Jose State, the teams that are kind of dragging down the overall conference strength of schedule.
All right, I got to take a time out here on the Full Court Press. Let's shift gears and talk Utah State football. We had a text that brought up a transfer. Let's talk more about that. Utah State announcing a number of transfers that are coming to the football team. We'll talk about who they are. And Jason took a dive into the numbers about the production lost and needs to be filled. Are these new players going to be able to fill some of those roles? We'll discuss next here on the Full Court Press.
We're thrilled to announce the grand opening of the new Cache Valley Bank Preston branch on Friday, January 10th from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. This is Ashley Nate from Cache Valley Bank. We love being part of the Preston community and can't wait to welcome you in our new location where you can find the same personal service that you've come to know and trust from Cache Valley Bank. We hope to see you there on Friday, January 10th from 10 to 4. Cache Valley Bank, member FDIC.
A mouth-watering Cafe Sabor burrito, smothered in cheese and fresh guacamole with endless chips and salsa, plus your favorite drink, all for just $7.95. It's Locals Day at Cafe Sabor. Every Thursday, the drinks are bottomless, the chips and salsa are endless, and the burritos are amazing, all for just $7.95. There's nothing better. It's Cafe Sabor's way of saying thanks, Cache Valley. Don't miss Locals Day every Thursday at Cafe Sabor in the historic train station, 6th West and Center in Logan.
No matter what the conditions, DD Auto and Salvage can get your vehicle up and off your property. Now is the time to plan to make extra cash by calling DD Auto and Salvage and moving that old vehicle. Let them pay you for that junk vehicle. DD Auto and Salvage makes it so easy to get rid of your junker vehicles, paying you the most money possible. If you have metal, DD Auto and Salvage in Logan wants to pay you today. Call 787-1204.
That's 787-1204 today.
See store for details.
The Aggies are number one here. The Full Court Press. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and online at 1069thefan.com.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. Utah State football had a good number of players entering the portal once that opened in early December, and it closed on December 28th. No more players can put their names in the portal at this point.
Except I keep hearing or seeing stuff on Twitter about players entering the portal. We're like 5 days away from it closing, and it's still like, so-and-so's entering the portal. Their agent tells someone, on 3 Sports, and I'm like, it's a little late to be telling him at this point. I mean, they have to have entered by December 28th. By 11:59, whatever time zone they use. So it's like, I guess if you're telling them that late, you should have gotten it a little early, because now it's this late. It gets a little tricky. There's a reason that most people enter in the first couple of days.
Yeah.
And not late.
I did read a few cases where guys put their names in the portal, but then they didn't publicize it till several days later. But again, that's kind of weird.
Yeah, that happens. I mean, there's some guys that don't really publicize it at all, and find out in weird ways sometimes. Sometimes you don't find out until you look.
roster release, you're like, wait a minute, where'd that guy go?
Yeah, the roster comes out in spring, and it's like, well, now I got to update how many players into the portal because there's a bunch of guys missing from the end of last year's roster. You got to like print out the roster daily to make sure you don't miss some guy leaving. They still have their 2024 roster up. Some teams already have a 2025 roster like page, but some teams are a little more conservative about it. Just wait. Wait until spring ball, and then they make the roster page because right now it would just be a convoluted mess.
Before we talk about players, just real quick, looks like Nate Dreiling has a new landing spot. He announced today he is going to be the new defensive coordinator at Arkansas State. So wishing him the best of luck in his new destination, and kind of a part of the country where he's kind of familiar. But I hope he does well. That's somebody that I hope that he gets a fair shot of doing what he is trained to do best and can just focus on that and then grow from there. So I would watch out for Arkansas State and their defense. It'll be fun to watch them improve.
Yeah, and I'm glad that he didn't end up having to go like be a position coach somewhere, because normally when you kind of fall off the ladder with wherever you're at, unless you're like going with a coach specifically to go somewhere else, like that can be tricky to kind of maintain your spot on the coaching ladder. I mean, Blake Anderson, he's an offensive coordinator. Kyle Cefalo, he's back to being a wide receivers coach. Nate Dreiling, I mean, technically he did go from head coach to defensive coordinator, but he started 2024. He got hired on January 10th to be a defensive coordinator. Wasn't expecting to be a head coach. Suddenly got thrown into that role 7 months later. So he's basically about where he was almost a year to the day he was hired as defensive coordinator for the Aggies. He's defensive coordinator for Arkansas State. So he's not like falling way down the coaching ladder. He didn't deserve to have that happen to him. Like what he got thrown into at Utah State was just something he couldn't control. And so it's nice. I know it's going from Utah State to Arkansas State. You can consider that going down if you want, but he's
it's an opportunity for a fresh start.
Yeah, he's landed on his feet. He's landed in a good spot. He's got a defensive coordinator job. He's gonna have his chance to work back up the coaching ladder, and I think he'll do just that.
Yeah, and I think he'll be a head coach again someday, on his terms. When he's ready for it. But Utah State football announcing like 8 different players officially as part of their roster for the upcoming season on December 30th. Some of these players, Jason, you already had as part of your transfer tracker. There were a few others that were kind of surprises. But Utah State saw a number of players leaving, but now Bronco Mendenhall and his staff are starting to fill that roster back up. And some exciting signees, some guys with some size and some experience coming in to fill some important roles for this Utah State football team.
Yeah, some interesting guys. I mean, some that were announced a while ago, like, Miles Davis is kind of interesting, where he was kind of in and out of being one of the top running backs for BYU. Of course, he's like a 5th or 6th year senior, I think, at this point. He's going to spend his final year of eligibility with the Aggies.
The Aggies need a running back.
Yeah, they do. They've lost so many players. One of the interesting guys they brought in, I think, Lafayette's Division II, right? Or FCS, I think.
They're FCS.
Because I have them on my list of Division I transfers. Tyree Morris, defensive tackle or defensive end. I'm not sure exactly which one, but 6'6", 273. Kind of has the build of like a bigger defensive end or a defensive tackle who could maybe put on some weight, because 273 is on the high end of a defensive end size, low end of a defensive tackle size. Although 6'6", it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But you do see some guys that height being defensive ends or outside linebackers. They can be pretty useful to have that height if you pair it with some speed, which having a chance to
like Tyler Fackrell type.
Yeah, but he had 65 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, blocked a kick last year at Lafayette. So that's one to keep an eye on as far as his statistics. He did get another New Mexico transfer, Bobby Arnold. That's one of the guys that hadn't been announced. They'd all guys that hadn't like announced themselves via their social media. But like you have some other guys coming from New Mexico, like Bryson Taylor. They're adding some New Mexico guys on defense and on offense. Because you got Javen Jacobs coming. They did announce Brevin Hamblin, who was listed as a safety at Utah Tech. They list him as an outside linebacker. And so that's kind of interesting. Like, this is a guy who's a 6'5", 205-pound safety, and they're listing him as an outside linebacker. Now, maybe that means he's going to be playing that hybrid position, which has been called striker or nickel. But
sometimes Bronco has his own.
Yeah, we need a universal name for that because everyone calls the middle linebacker the Mike and the weak side linebacker the Will. Let's just get a universal name for this hybrid position that everybody has in their defense. Like even the high schools all have their name for it. So that may end up being actually the position he plays, where he goes from defensive back to hybrid defensive back linebacker. So we'll see. But that's the guy who had 96 tackles last year at Utah Tech. So they're adding some guys that have some experience and some production, as opposed to you had a guy like D'Angelo Mays, who didn't have a whole lot of stats in New Mexico, and you don't know who that is because he hasn't had a chance to play on the field yet. They also added, of course, another kicker, Carter Brown, out of Cincinnati, who also played. I didn't write it down. I want to say it was UCLA. There's another Power 5 school that he played for. He's been at 2 different places.
Well, Braden Pagan, wide receiver.
Yeah,
he comes from UCLA.
Maybe that's Carter Brown. He's came from Cincinnati, and as I was looking at his profile today, he'd been somewhere else. But he's a senior. Kicked his first year at Cincinnati. It seemed like he had numbered. He was 15 of 18, I think. And then this last year, he kind of got usurped as the he still went 3 of 5 in field goals, 8 of 8 on PATs, but lost the starting job. So that's where he's transferring and coming to Utah State. So he's yet another kicker and punter. There's 3 or 4 of those, I swear. There's 2 long snappers, a couple of punters. The Aggies keep adding special teams players. Granted, they need them.
They need them
because they've lost all their special teams guys. They lost their long snapper, starting kicker, starting punter, backup punter. They graduated one of their 2 kickers. They graduated a punter and a kicker, had the backups of those 2 guys transfer, and lost the starting and backup long snapper. So I guess they need all these guys to transfer and sign because they lost everybody.
Yeah.
So there's not really anybody who's like this, really, eye-popping transfer. They're filling out the roster right now. They're bringing in some JUCO guys. There's a few junior college players they announced that hadn't already been announced. They're bringing in some Division I players. It doesn't look sexy right now, so we just got to wait and see. Maybe be a little bit worried in a month or 2 if they're still not adding any quality transfers, because they need to add a lot of quality transfers.
Well, they need to add a bunch of guys if they want them here to be enrolled in time for spring practices.
Yeah, I know they need them because the
semester begins next week.
Yeah, and if they don't add them, then they're not going to have a team for spring, because these are the numbers that I went through. It's how much attrition did Utah State lose as far as their production? And it's a lot. A lot of guys transferred, but a lot of people also graduated too. That's one of the things. The Aggies didn't have a ton of transfers. I think they had 30 or 32, I think is the count I ended up with, which is less than the last 2 years. Mind you, we've only gone through the first portal window, but still, the last couple of years, they were getting into the 40s. This year, they're in the low 30s. But they still lost a ton because a lot of these guys graduated. So when I went through the numbers, I thought, okay, how many snaps played did they lose? Well, on offense, 82% of the snaps played this year are now gone. Graduated, NFL draft, transfer, whatever, 82% are gone. So you have 18% of snaps returning in one form or another. You got guys like Jack Histera, Bryson Barnes, George Miley. I think that's 90% of your returning snaps is those 3 guys. Because you lost your entire offensive line, you lost your quarterback, you lost your top 3 wide receivers in production, lost your top 3 running backs. They're losing everything. I look at pass yards production. 73% of pass yard production gone, 71% of rushing yards, 81% of receiving yards, and then 72% of your touchdowns scored from scrimmage. So you're rushing and receiving touchdowns. They need, sure, they're filling in some transfers now, but they need guys to come in for the sake of, you need to have a roster.
Right.
Because they don't have one. They have 0 returning offensive starters. Unless Brock Lane comes back. I'm not sure if he's coming back either.
I don't think he.
I don't even think I actually included
can.
him in these calculations.
I thought his eligibility is done.
I think he might have had another year. For whatever reason, I don't think I actually include him in this. So actually, if you include him there, there's even more. So you're probably looking at like 85% of snaps and even more of your receiving yards and touchdowns. So they've lost everything on offense, pretty much. Like I said, your top three returning guys in terms of snaps are like a fourth string wide receiver, like your fourth overall wide receiver, a backup interior offensive lineman, and your backup quarterback. Those are the three guys, like, period, that you have returning. That's basically nothing. On defense, it's slightly better because you got Ike Larson. I think Gabriel Iniguez is still around because I think he's got another year, and I haven't seen his name in the transfer portal. So you got a couple of guys, but almost everyone aside from them is leaving. It's not quite as bad because it's 62% of snaps lost. And then it's the 63% of tackles, 58% of tackles for loss, 51% of sacks. So you're hanging around in the 50s. You've lost about half of your production, a little more than half as far as amount played. But that's, again, a lot gone. And so that's why I say they don't just need transfers. They need quality transfers because they need not just guys to fill out a roster. They need starters. They need producers. Guys that are going to go out there and step on the field and play 70 snaps. Because they have two guys on like the entire roster who did that last year. Guys that went out there and could play 70 snaps in a game. Everyone else is just backups. So
yeah,
they need to find transfers, and they need to find them relatively quickly because a lot of the good ones are getting picked up. The kind of guys that you want to bring in, they're committing somewhere because they're highly valued and wanted. So you got to find some way to get them in the door, or you're going to have a pretty rough 2025 because it's just going to be a development year.
Right. It just may be tapping a lot more out of junior college or unproven guys or guys that they may have seen on a practice squad, but now all of a sudden they have to put them in as a starter role because there's just no other options.
Yeah. So this is going to be a massive recruiting session. With this winter, in the spring, in the summer, it's keeping whatever guys you have left. There's almost nobody left to transfer. That's why I'm not really looking at the transfer portal as much anymore because there's nobody else to leave. Everyone who can leave is left. So, but they've got to bring in a lot of guys. They've got to have a really good recruiting session. Now, whether they have to bring in development guys, maybe that's all they got left. Maybe that's the only kind of player they're going to be able to bring in. And if that's the case, then have a rebuilding 2025, I guess.
Well, and it's I know we'd all love to see this roster in place before spring practices begin, but there's that second transfer window. There are going to be some guys who even committed in this last fall who won't be able to get here till the summer. So there's going to be still some time for this roster to fully coalesce. And this spring ball will be interesting with this new staff, trying to figure out what they have and evaluating these players and try to find guys to fill in because there's a lot of opportunity for guys to step in and play large roles if they can get their stuff together and make an impact.
Yeah, but the way they're going, they're not even going to have a full competent roster by the time spring ball begins because they don't.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if they'd even be able to do a scrimmage.
Yeah, they don't
have enough guys.
Yeah, they don't have enough guys now. They only have a little bit longer to have guys available for spring ball. Maybe just be running drills and doing, classwork essentially, or film work and whatnot, learning all the stuff, and then try and pick up the pieces when the spring window opens. Try and take advantage of it then. Nobody will transfer out because everyone thinks they've got the job, or maybe they'll transfer once they maybe get recruited over. Who knows? But they're going to have to utilize the portal as much as possible to field a roster that is capable of playing Division I football. Because right now they don't have one. They don't have a Division I, starting unit. They don't have 2 or 3 deep because they just don't have the bodies. So, but this is the time to not have I shouldn't be acting like we're freaking out because it's January.
Yeah, there's still time.
There's time, but they gotta get moving and grooving. pretty quickly here.
The window is closing.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is that the window? That's where you're starting to get the panic. Like, because when the portal window opens and everyone leaves, it's like, all right, they'll eventually start committing. Now is when they got to start committing. Because otherwise, you start worrying about, okay, how many players do you have? So that's kind of when this process should really start going, because they announced a bunch of players, and hopefully they keep announcing, and you're hopefully going to see this big wave of players announce over the next couple of weeks. And that's where you can kind of stop being nervous, is when you see that wave happening.
435-339-0321 to join us here on the Full Court Press. Got to take a time out, but when we come back, we'll update you on what's going on in the college football playoff. I've got a game playing today, and it's nearing completion.
It is over.
It is now finally final. It is now finally final. So what is that? What has this second round told us about the college football playoff? We'll discuss that next here on the Full Court Press.
It's Christmas savings time at Daryl's Appliance. This is Jay with Daryl's. We have a holiday offer for you. Did you know Daryl's has scratch and dent appliances? For a limited time, save an extra 10% off on our scratch and dent appliances. Just mention this ad. Plus, get a free 2-year warranty on parts and repairs from Daryl's, west on Airport Road, open till 6 p.m. on weekdays, 5 on Saturday.
See Daryl's Appliance in beautiful downtown Benson.
Many Aggie fans like to go to the game. Some fans love to yell at the TV, and all fans like to wear a shirt or a jacket with their favorite team's logo. Aggie fans find the best selection of USU logoed apparel at Locker 42. Find yourself an Aggie t-shirt for $10. Locker 42 features Aggie logoed hoodies, jackets, and golf shirts, and a hat wall with over 40 styles. Women's specific apparel, youth sizes for the junior Aggie, and toddler and infant Aggie items as well. Locker 42 is a store for Utah State fans by Utah State fans, and proud to be part of Aggie Nation.
Adams Wealth Advisors tailors your future with expert in-house help. You need a CPA? No problem. Legal help? They can do that. And of course, certified financial planners with years of experience watching over every move.
This is Craig Adams. At Adams Wealth Advisors, we are here to help you receive peace of mind, whether you've done a lot of planning or a little planning. Count on our team at Adams Wealth Advisors for honesty, professionalism, and integrity.
Visit AdamsWealthAdvisors.com or call 752-1702 to schedule a time with an advisor today.
Are you looking for compassionate and reliable care for yourself or a loved one? Look no further than Aegis Home Health and Hospice. I'm Tom Sherlock, a licensed social worker, part of the dedicated team of professionals committed to meeting the needs of our community. Voted best in Northern Utah 2 years in a row, we pride ourselves on delivering exceptional service that you can depend on. We're here to ensure comfort and dignity every step of the way. When it comes to your health, choose the agency that Northern Utah trusts the most. Choose Aegis. Visit myaegis.com or call today 435-723-9000.
Interviews, analysis, and a little bit of fun mixed in. The Full Court Press on Sports Talk Radio, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM. The Fan.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen, Jason Walker. If you want to chime in, always love to hear from you on our Full Court Press text line, 435-339-0321. Quickly from 9315. What was things like for Bronco his first year spring ball in New Mexico with their roster switch out similar, or is this a whole different thing? Yeah, I don't know.
I can maybe double check.
Because they had a pretty special year, and then their coach left. They had a lot of transfers. Some number of guys came to Logan, but yeah, he had to rebuild the roster in New Mexico.
Yeah, so he probably I make it sound like the Aggies aren't going to have enough players on their roster. It's a bit of an exaggeration. It's just you worry because they have so much to fill. They probably had more to fill than they did in New Mexico last year. So the fact they don't have a ton of quality transfers yet is a bit worrying, but or at least known transfers. I shouldn't knock the guys they've brought in because it's not like they're not good players, but they're just unknowns. So, but they have to just get more. They have to get more players. I know there's a roster cap now, so it's going to be less, but they still got to get players. They've got to get a lot of them. So, and Bronco also ran off a lot of the players. Like deliberately ran off a lot of the players from this last year, which I know that's not unique, but the fact that you had a lot of players graduate and they've run off a lot of transfers, that's where it's like, hey, better know what you're doing with bringing in the new transfers because they got to be better than the last ones to justify what you've done this offseason.
Yeah, very true. Before we get into some of the other things that we discussed, we do need to do Pick 6 on a Thursday. Want to make sure we get it in because Jason's got to go here soon to go call a high school basketball game. So it's the 6 things we think will happen this weekend.
I bet you $20 I can get you gambling before the end of the day. No way.
It's the Full Court Press Pick 6.
Ever since March Madness ended, I am so bored.
6 things we think will happen this weekend.
I don't know how the whole betting thing started, but it's fun.
We're not betting. We're not putting anything on the line.
That's not legal here in Utah.
We're just trying to predict what might happen this weekend. And if memory serves me, I believe you won the last time we did this.
Yes, I did.
It's been a minute since we've done it.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks. It's been a little convoluted. So I'll go ahead and go first with my lines. So we're going to start with this Saturday, Utah State taking on Fresno State. How many offensive rebounds does Carson Templin have? Over, under, 3.5.
Offensive rebounds?
Offensive rebounds. Just offensive rebounds.
Ooh, I'm going to take the under.
All right, I'll take the over. And then New Mexico hosting Nevada. It's the 1,000th game in the pit. New Mexico's favored by 3.5. You take New Mexico or take Nevada in this Friday matchup?
You got a bunch of former coaches between the two sidelines there. I'm going to take New Mexico.
I'm going to take New Mexico as well. And do it with Nevada.
You're going to cover, yeah.
And then another Mountain West matchup, San Diego State and Boise on Saturday. Who has more combined points, rebounds, and assists? Miles Bird or Tyson Degenhardt? These are the 2 stars for the 2 teams. Who has more points, rebounds, and assists?
I'm going to take Degenhardt.
All right. I'll take Miles and go with San Diego State. All right,
okay,
go ahead.
Let's stay in that same game.
All right.
Turnovers by the Broncos. I'm going to set it at 12.5.
I'm going to say under.
I'll take the over. Utah State made 3-pointers versus Fresno State. 8.5.
I'm going to say over.
Okay, I'll take the under. And then finally, Bryce Sensabaugh. Points, rebounds, and assists at Miami on Saturday, setting it at 10.5.
I'm going to say under.
I'm going to take the over.
All right. And then the tiebreaker, going to the NFL. Bills, Patriots. Bills are favored by 2.5. Unlikely to play most of their starters. The 13-3 Bills going up against the 3-13 Patriots. The Patriots are going full out. They're starting Drake May and everything. So Bills by 2.5 over the Patriots.
Just straight up on the line there.
Yeah, that line, Bills by 2.5.
I'm still going to take the Bills.
All right. Well, I'll stay with the Patriots. I have to, but
it's your team.
It's my team. I got to stick with them.
You got to stick with them.
I watch them get murdered by the Chargers over Christmas weekend.
So those are our 6 items. We'll recap on Monday to see how well we did and trying to predict what would happen over the weekend. With that, I'm going to take another time out. We'll say goodbye to Jason as he's going to head over to Logan High School. We got one high school basketball game going on tonight. Logan hosting Tooele. And still kind of in some non-region games going on. And that's one of them. That'll be on our sister station, KVNU, coming up in the tip-off at 7 o'clock. Quick timeout. We'll be right back with some other things to discuss here on the Full Court Press.
This is Kyle at Advanced Door, and we guarantee every garage door we install for a lifetime, parts and labor. That's every door, every spring, every roller, every track, every motor. The entire garage door system guaranteed for a lifetime, parts and labor. We're Advanced Door, and we guarantee you'll be hearing this for a long time. Find out more at advanced-door.com. That's advanced-door.com.
S.E. Needham Jewelers is where Utah gets engaged. We offer a large selection of personalized service and extraordinary benefits with our integrity price guarantee. At Match Quality, you'll find our prices to be as low or lower than any store in the state. We consistently beat any 50 to 70% off sales, internet pricing, or so-called wholesale deals. In fact, we even price our diamonds at internet pricing. so you'll get SE Needham quality at internet prices. Open Monday through Saturday 10 to 7, where Utah gets engaged. SE Needham Jewelers, middle of the block, at the sign of the clock.
Disasters don't wait for a convenient time. When the unexpected strikes, call the trusted team at Blue Sky. Remember, Blue Sky is that same great ARS team you know and trust.
This is Tom with Blue Sky Restoration. When disaster strikes, whether it's a flood, fire, mold damage, or an unforeseen accident, Blue Sky will clean up, repair, and restore your home or business like it was before. No disaster is too big or too small. For all your restoration needs, you can trust our Blue Sky team.
Whether you're a farmer working the fields, a homeowner tackling weekend projects, or a contractor building the next big thing, you need a Kubota machine that works as hard as you do. And Cash Equipment is home to all your Kubota equipment, service, and parts needs. From plowing fields and clearing land to digging trenches and moving material. Come see why Cash Equipment and Kubota are the choice of champions on the farm, at home, and on the job site. Cash Equipment in Hyde Park and online at cashequipment.com.
Welcome back to the Full Court Press. Eric Frandsen with you. Jason Walker is making his way to Logan High School. Grizzlies taking on the Bison in the in a basketball game there at Logan High in the Grizzly Den, and the part of wrapping up some non-region games. A couple other teams going to be in action this weekend with non-region, and we also have a region contest tomorrow between Skyview and Green Canyon. But, still high school basketball starting to pick up again this weekend with a lot of teams in action on Friday and even some on Saturday. But wanted to update you on what's going on in the college football playoff. The game has gone final. Notre Dame has beaten Georgia 23-10. And so you look at the who's moving on to the semifinal. All the teams that won yesterday and today, well, really since 2 days ago, from New Year's Eve through today, all the teams that won were the lower seeded teams. Isn't that bonkers? And so all the hate, all the yapping heads talking about the seeding and who did and didn't belong. It's been so silly. We just sit back and let it play out. Let the players decide and the teams decide. And over the last few days, well, you never know what's going to happen. We had a great game in the Peach Bowl, an all-timer, and then we've had a couple of stinkers. The game here today, as we were kind of keeping an eye on it over the course of the show, scoreless first quarter, exciting middle of the game, and then Notre Dame adding a field goal in the fourth to stretch their lead. But Notre Dame winning over Georgia 23-10. So when you look at the bracket, all of the these teams that were the lower seeded are the ones that at least going into this week, were the ones who were able to win. So kind of crazy how that's worked out, because Penn State was a 6 seed beating number 3 seeded Boise. Ohio State an 8 seed beating number 1 Oregon. Number 5 Texas beating the 4 seed Arizona State. And now we just saw what happened with Notre Dame as these 7 seed beating number 2 Georgia. So coming into the semifinals, the Orange Bowl will be on Thursday, January 9th on ESPN at 5:30. Number 7 Notre Dame taking on number 6 Penn State. And then on Friday, January 10th, it's the Cotton Bowl with number 5 Texas, basically a home game for them, hosting number 8 Ohio State. Winners of those 2 games will face each other for the championship game in Atlanta on Monday, January 20th. So crazy. Notre Dame opens as a 1.5-point favorite over Penn State, and Ohio State opens as a 6-point favorite over Texas. So, I think that there needs to be some tweaking to the college football playoff with seeding and things like that. The top 4 teams probably deserve the bye instead of just the conference champions who deserve that bye. But we also saw, I think it'll be interesting to watch and monitor through these next few games, like what will the traveling fan bases look like? Because fans will travel to one big bowl game, but can they travel for multiple bowl games? Like some of these teams that are still in this, like we'll just pick Penn State, for example. They traveled well to the Fiesta Bowl. How well will they travel to the Orange Bowl down in Miami? And if by chance Penn State wins, how well will that fan base travel a third time and going to Georgia for that championship? So it will be interesting to see how that might change in the future with that. I thought the first round games being at home sites was great. It proved that winning it at home, winning on the road is tough. Playing at neutral sites didn't really change things too much, other than the underseeded teams are the ones who won. So I guess that is a big difference rather than the games being played at home sites. But look, I've really enjoyed the college football bowl season. Everybody's talking about the NBA ratings are down, and part of that is the NBA's fault, but also part of it is college football has been fantastic. The NFL has been dynamic. So there's just competing attention. And with the bowl season and this new inaugural college football playoff, it's been so fun. And even the non-college football playoff bowl games have been exciting and electric and down to the wire, decided by one score for a lot of these. So this football is king. And they've definitely proven that. As some of the numbers have come in on viewership on these bowl games, even in the non-playoff games, getting very strong ratings. So it will continue for a few more weeks. And January 20th is when we will crown the overall national champion. But now that all of these games have been played, now that every team in the college football playoff has played a game, does it give us any better idea of who the front runners are? Now we're down to our final four. Clearly not the four that we thought would be the top four, because the highest seeded team is number 5, Texas. So 5, 6, 7, and 8 are the teams that are left in this. But Ohio State, the way they looked against Oregon, in my mind, they've got to be the front runner based on how they've played. But Notre Dame played a good defensive game today. Penn State played solid against Boise. Texas had moments, but they allowed Arizona State back into it. Took double overtime for them to get it done. So kind of crazy how that's played out. Texas coming in from 8-9, 6-8. I feel bad for JD in that Oregon game. Yeah, I was thinking about JD during that one. That was rough to see the Ducks just struggle as much as they did against Ohio State. But still, I think it's been fun. I love seeing more teams involved in this and see how it advances. Yes, there will be tweaks. There need to be tweaks. And we'll see how that continues to develop over these next few years. But that's going to do it for us tonight here on the Full Court Press. Thanks very much for tuning in, for texting in, being a part of the program. The podcasts will be up shortly. Podcast for last hour is already up. And podcast for this hour will be up shortly. We got Logan High basketball playing on KVNU coming up here in about an hour. And we got other high school games, a lot of high school games taking place tomorrow on our family of radio stations and streaming on Cache Valley Daily. Until then, we'll see you back here tomorrow, everybody.
Sports Talk Radio, KLGN Logan, 106.9 FM, 1390 AM, and online at 1069thefan.com.